welcome. My name is Itzel Mora, and on behalf of the ANUIES-TIC 2020 Conference Series, it is my pleasure to thank each of you for being here with us today. On this occasion, we present the conference Leading Change, Build a Security Culture of Protect, Detect, and Respond by Lance Spitzner, Director of SAN Security Awareness, who shall be accompanied by the Director of Information Technology at Universidad Autónoma Metropolitana, Max de Mendizábal, as moderator.
Thank you very much. Let me introduce to Lance Spitzner. He is one of the teachers and expert on security information systems at the SANS organization, at the SANS Institute. He is an expert for more than 20 years, and his experience began many years ago, but one of his main achievements was the project of HoneyNet. The HoneyNet is a network that tries to catch the hackers and control what they're doing and analyze what they're doing in our networks. So with no further ado, let me introduce Lance Spitzner, that he's going to talk about news on security. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Yep. Share my screen as I kick things off here. All right. It looks like I need, let's see here. Do you guys give me permission to share? All right, we have permission to share. Let's see here. Can you still see my screen? Let's see here.
All right, perfect.
All right, what do you know, folks? Always takes a moment or two to get this figured out, but here we go. My name is mentioned Lance Spitzner, and I'm very excited to talk to everyone today about building a strong security culture. Quite often, we tend to focus just on the technical side of cybersecurity. And for the past 20 years, that may have worked well, but now we need to focus on the human side also. So what I'm going to share with you today is a bit of the problem we're facing, and then I'm going to share 3 actionable items you can take in your organization to build a strong security culture and build a far more secure organization. So first, I'd like to start with what is the problem? The problem we have quite often is when we're trying to build a strong security culture, we tend to blame people as the problem, especially in technical security community. Quite often I hear security professionals say, Lance, people are the problem. You can't patch stupid. So we tend to blame people, but in reality, the problem is not people. The problem is you and I, the security community. And when I hear we should blame people or you can't patch stupid, I say, go look in the mirror. What do I mean by this? Well, take a look at everything Microsoft has done to secure the Windows operating system in the past 20 years. 20 years ago, it was very easy to hack any Windows computer. If I took a default installation of Windows XP and connected it to the internet, it would be hacked in under 3 hours. And as Max noted, I ran something called the HoneyNet project. That's how we know this. But over 20 years, Microsoft implemented a tremendous number of controls in the Windows operating system, making it now very hard to hack a Windows computer. That is until a human touches the keyboard. Once people interact with technology, that is when risk just grows exponentially. But why is that? Well, look at it this way. We've done a very good job of securing technology over the past 20 years. But in that same time period, we've done a very poor job of securing people. People are just like computers. We store, process, and transfer information. And just like computers, people need to be secured. But we've done very little in the past 20 years to make security simple, to communicate to and engage people in their terms. As a result, the human operating system has become very vulnerable because we've done little to secure them. In fact, I would argue we have become so good at using technology to secure technology, we're driving the bad guys to target the human. This is why over the past 20 years, we've seen a continued growth of bad guys targeting people. Almost all breaches nowadays are human related. Things like phishing attacks, password guessing, things like that. This situation is our fault. So instead of saying people are the weakest link, instead of blaming people for being the reason breaches happen, I prefer to say people are the primary attack vector. When you say people are the weakest link, it blames them. When you say people are the primary attack vector, it blames us. So we need to do a better job securing our workforce. But it's just not the workforce, but it's culture. In 2017, we had an epic breach in the United States, Equifax. Over 140 million people's data was breached. And not just email addresses and home address, but phone numbers, social security numbers, all of your financial history. It was bad. What's interesting is in 2018, US Congress did a complete study of the breach to including technical documentation and congressional testimony. And out of all of this research, which they published, they discovered the number one issue was their culture, their security culture. Yes, there was a technical vulnerability exploited in a specific system, an unpatched Apache Struts vulnerability, but that was a symptom of a far bigger problem. So a security culture is important not only for securing people, but creating an environment where security initiatives like vulnerability management, DevSecOps, single sign-on, where these type of initiatives are far more successful. So in today's age, technology alone is no longer enough. We have to also the human side, processes, people, most importantly, culture. So like I promised, how do we do this? First, what is culture? I'm using a picture of an iceberg. I took this from the book People-Centric Security by Dr. Lance Hyden, and he compares culture to an iceberg. Culture, like an iceberg, is hard to move, takes time. Culture, like an iceberg, most of it you don't see. Culture is not only what people do, their behaviors, but what they think, values, attitudes, perceptions, beliefs. And most of what people think, you can't see. Now, a lot of times organizations will say, but Lance, we are securing our people. We are working on our security culture. And what they do is they pick somebody from their security team to run the security awareness program. Now, what happens is when technical security people like me are put in charge of an awareness program, we perceive ourselves as the digital guardians of cyberspace, out to save the world and do good. And this is how many security professionals also perceive themselves. The problem is when you and I, the technical community, go out and talk to the rest of the world, the rest of our workforce, our executives, management, marketing, sales, human resources. You and I think this is who we are, but in reality, this is how most of the world perceives us. Nerds, geeks, nobody understands us. We're confusing, we're overwhelming. Sometimes security is even scary or intimidating. So what we need to do is, if we're going to secure our workforce, create a strong culture, we have to stop approaching it like technology and start taking a more human approach. And this, folks, is how we do that. When it comes to creating a strong culture, this may sound odd, but we can use Newton's first law. It turns out people are like mass. An object at rest stays at rest unless a force is applied. Your workforce, your culture is no different. Nothing will change unless we apply a force. Now, Newton said force equals ma, mass times acceleration. Turns out, as I'm about to show you, the exact same formula works to impact culture. So we are going to apply Newton's law to help secure your organization and create a strong culture. So first, one of the most common mistakes I tend to see in cybersecurity is we tend to think our problems are new, so our solutions must be new, so we have to come up with our own solutions. While that may be true for technology, that's not true for the human perspective. Concepts of human behavior, organizational change, culture, these have been around for decades, for years and years. And there is a tremendous amount of research and science and case studies and publications we can use to apply to creating a strong security culture. So this presentation is not only based on the lessons learned working with hundreds of organizations, but also the fantastic knowledge and research by all these amazing different authors. And what's great is all these different books, all these different research, while they may tend to take a different approach on organizational change and culture, they tend to all say the same thing. So this talk is all about synthesizing and simplifying 10 years of my experience working on culture and awareness, combined with all of this fantastic research by these different authors. I'm in no way saying this is the only research on human behavior, psychology, organizational change. This is merely the books that most influenced me and or research. By the way, if you're interested, out of all of these books, this is the one I recommend you start with, Switch. It's the easiest to read. The one above it, Thinking Fast and Slow, should probably be the last one because it's the most in-depth. But that book, Thinking Fast and Slow, also won a Nobel Prize. In fact, let's apply the concepts from Thinking Fast and Slow. This book helped establish the foundation of how you and I operate. Turns out, after decades of research, this book identified that the human mind operates on two levels: system 1, system 2. System 2 is the part of your brain that uses logic, data, and analysis to make decisions. Think Spock from Star Trek. Now, we like to think our brain is always in a logical mode, but it turns out our brain does not like to use this system 2 data-focused mode. The problem is it's very energy intensive, time intensive. Human nature is our brain is very lazy. It wants to make decisions the easiest way possible. So it will make decisions using emotion, gut instinct. That's system 1. So by default, most humans are operating in system 1. So if Spock represents system 2, the logical part of our brain, who represents system 1? Homer Simpson. The reason this foundation is so important is so many of our security policies, our security communication, our security architecture is based on the perception everyone thinks very logically in a precise data analytic manner, like Spock. But in reality, by default, most of us are operating in system 1, Homer Simpson. I'm not saying people are smart or stupid. I'm just saying we tend to make decisions more emotional based than rational based. That means don't design your security program for a Spock, but a Homer Simpson. Let me give you an example of this system 2 versus system 1. I'm going to give you a word challenge. The word challenge is this, and this is straight from Daniel Kahneman's book. A baseball bat and ball together cost $1.10. The bat is $1 more than the ball. If that's the case, how much is the ball? Now, a lot of you said, well, if the bat's $1 more than the ball must be 10 cents. That's the Homer Simpson in all of us. That's our brain just leaping to a conclusion. But if we take a step back and think like Spock, we quickly realize actually the ball is 5 cents. Because if the ball was 10 cents, and the bat costs $1 more than the ball, that means the bat would be $1.10, the ball would be 10 cents, and the total cost would be $1.20. So the ball is actually 5 cents. So if you're like me and you said 10 cents, Homer Simpson. So we have to keep our awareness program as Homer Simpson focused as possible. Our security architecture, our security policies, processes, and procedures. How do we do that? Well, I've taken 10 years of experience working with security culture and all of this different research and simplified it for you and I into Newton's first law. We're going to apply a force, F equals ma. M is motivation. How do we motivate? A is ability. How do we ensure whatever we're asking is as easy as possible? So let me show you briefly how you can do each in your own organization. First and foremost, when it comes to motivation, we need to explain why something is so important. There's a fantastic book called Start With Why, written by Simon Sinek. And he has a fantastic TED Talk. It's on YouTube about the golden circle. Recommend you watch it. 15 minutes. It is a fun story. And the whole idea behind the golden circle is the best leaders, the most influential marketing campaigns, the most engaging communication never starts with what or how, but explain why. Why is something so important? Why is something so valuable? So we always want to start our communication with why. Let me give you an example. Here is a screenshot of a password manager. Security technology designed for securely storing all your passwords. Passwords are a horrible, painful security control. Everybody hates them. I hate them because we're running around telling everybody, hey, use long passwords, complex passwords, change them every 90 days, make them unique, make it hard to remember, painful to type, generate new ones. They are painful, but password managers help you securely store them all. Are they perfect? No. Are they better than nothing at all? Yes. The problem is many organizations would roll out password managers like this. The security team would send out an email to the entire workforce on a Monday morning. Hey folks, we're rolling out a new technology called password managers. Everybody must adopt and use them by the end of the week. This is what a password manager is. This is how to use it. Go. Now everybody's going, why do I have to do this? This is painful. There's a lot of resistance because the security team never started with why. If you start all communication with why, people are far more likely to be motivated. So, for example, if I was going to roll out a password manager to my company, the first email I would send is not about what they are or how. I would send an email, hey folks, are you tired of passwords? Do you hate having to remember them? Tired of typing them in all the time? Tired of generating new passwords? Can't remember your security questions? Are your kids even forgetting their own passwords? We've got an awesome solution for you. Password managers. You don't have to remember them. You don't have to type them. Logging in is automated. We're solving all your problems. Oh, by the way, not only can you use them for work, but you can use them for home, also for personal use. They make your life so much easier. Now, if you start your password manager rollout with this approach, people are excited, they buy in, more likely to adopt the technology, change behavior, and now the security team are the good guys, not the bad guys. In fact, what I just explained to you is marketing 101. It's all about getting people's attention, interest, and generating desire. So think about this. Anytime you're rolling out a big security initiative, don't have the geeks do the communication. Work with marketing, work with communications. Have them help explain the why, help engage. You're far more likely to motivate by taking this approach, change behavior, and build a strong security culture. So that's a quick overview on how to motivate people. But also we want to get into ability. How can we enable people so whatever we're asking them to do is easy as possible? So really, you have two levers to not only securing your workforce, but creating that strong security culture: motivation and ability. Now, before we get into ability, of these two, I would suggest that ability is actually the easier level. And the reason why is this. Let's go back to this slide right here. Geeks, you and I suffer from something called curse of knowledge. Curse of knowledge states the more of an expert you are at something, the worse you are at communicating it. So what happens is, geeks, you and I live and breathe security. Things like MFA, full disk encryption, automated patching, cloud. These things are all easy for us because we live and breathe it. And we assume since it's easy for us, it must be easy for everyone else. That is why so often security teams don't even bother explaining why something is important, because they know why password managers are important. So they just assume other people know they're important. That's why so often security teams forget the why part. Curse of knowledge. So what ends up happening, folks, is, like I said, we have to motivate, but we also have to enable ability. And what happens is, you and I perceive a multi-factor authentication rollout as really, really simple, but for the vast majority of your organization, it's really, really hard. So one of the key things is, how can we make security as simple as possible? Turns out there's a lot of great research and steps you can take. A fantastic book called Nudge, by Thaler and Sunstein. How do we create an environment where it's as easy as possible for people to do what we want them to do? Remember, don't architect security for Spock, Homer, Simpson. Great story in the book. Schiphol Airport had a problem with something called spillage in the men's public bathrooms. All right, now, ladies, this may surprise you, but when men use the urinals in public bathrooms, sometimes our aim is not very good and we miss and create a mess. Now, Schiphol Airport could have put up all these signs explaining how men could improve their aim when using the urinals. That's trying to use the Spock approach. But book Nudge is all about, how do we create an environment for Homer Simpson where we get them to do what we want them to do without them knowing it. So at Schiphol Airport, instead of putting up signs, they put a simple sticker of a fly in each urinal, because in every grown man lives a 10-year-old boy, and we can't refuse the idea of a target. As a result of all the guys trying to hit the fly in the urinal, there was an 80% reduction in spillage and 10% reduction in overall cleaning costs. Ladies, ask any guy, he will tell you he's been somewhere where there is a bug, spider, fly, or target in that urinal. So how can we do this in cybersecurity? Well, one of the key takeaways from that book, Nudge, is we can't overload people with options. We have to give them as few choices as possible. So an example of where we do this wrong is, we security geeks will give people a document, how to secure your computer, and it's 20 steps long. How to secure your home, 25 steps. People are overwhelmed. Give them 3, no more. The term is choice overload, cognitive overload. And the challenge you and I have is, instead of throwing every behavior possible at people, we have to prioritize and focus on as few behaviors that have the greatest impact. The fewer behaviors we teach, the fewer policies we put out, the more likely people will follow them. This is all about simplifying and enabling. So what ends up here is, let me give you an example of how to do this. So one of the most common examples of where we get security wrong is passwords. We create very painful password policies. Now, to us security geeks, these password policies seem simple. You know, we tell people, hey folks, secure passwords are key. All you need is a long password that has a symbol, number, uppercase, lowercase, and then change it every 90 days. Oh, every password must be unique, and never write your password down. How hard could that be? Well, turns out it's actually really, really hard. So what ends up happening is we push out policies that we think are easy because we're securing Spock. But Homer Simpson is like, no, this is way too hard. So when you read about all these breaches because people had bad passwords or password accounts broken because they had simple or bad passwords, we need to stop blaming people and start blaming ourselves. How can we simplify passwords? So let's take the book Nudge. Let's take all this research and go through everything we're probably doing wrong with passwords. Remember, the simpler we make something, the easier it is to do. The easier it is to do, the more likely people will do it. So first of all, when it comes to passwords, is there anything we can stop telling people to do? Yes. Turns out changing your password every 90 days is now a bad thing. 20 years ago, that may have helped. But nowadays, having everybody in your organization change that number 1 at the end of their password to a number 2 does nothing to help. Want to know why people keep using simple passwords? Because we ask them to change all the time. Why do they have their passwords on sticky notes? Because we ask to change all the time. So now the best practice for passwords is keep them, but keep them long and hard. So change password every 90 days. Let's get rid of that and make passwords simpler. Are there technologies we can use to make passwords simpler? Yes, things like single sign-on, or perhaps for your mobile device. So here's my mobile device, biometrics. So you can use your phone, a finger, your face. Can we make password policies simpler? Yes. You know that complexity requirement? Uppercase, lowercase, symbol, number. Get rid of it. Just make your passwords long, a passphrase. It can be random words. Finally, what can we do to make passwords easier? Password manager, like we talked before. They allow you to securely store all your passwords in a single program. Now, I've had people tell me, Lance, we will not let password managers in our company. They're not secure. I hate to break it to you, but you already have password managers in your company. You just don't know it. But instead of people writing their passwords down in a secure program, instead they're securing all their passwords on sticky notes, Google Docs, and spreadsheets. That is really, really risky. So once again, if we don't provide Homer Simpson tools to keep things simple, Homer Simpson's going to go out and do his own thing. So here's one example of how we can take something complex and make it simple. But here is another way, one of my favorite examples. There is a bank in America called USAA. based out of San Antonio, Texas. And what they do is they take their security policies and write them as comic books, making it much easier for people to read, much easier for people to understand. Here's an example of policies they give to their customer support team on how to identify fraud in phone calls, the red flags they should look about. So not only do we want to make our policies as simple as possible, but communicate them in a way that are easy to understand. Yes, you understand your security policies. They're probably easy for you, but that's probably because you helped write them. For most of the world, remember cursive knowledge? They're confusing, they're overwhelming. Perhaps you want your your IT admins, your IT operations team. Maybe you want to teach them on how to look for indicators of a compromised system. Think about it. IT admins work with their systems every day. They know what normal is, so they're very good at spotting abnormal. So what happens is arm them with the tools, give them cheat sheets. Hey, if you think something might be up, run these commands, how to find new or unauthorized accounts, new or unauthorized processes, unauthorized network connections. All of these commands are right here. In fact, maybe give them a way to automate it and they get a report once a week. This is all the odd stuff that happened on your system. If you think your system may have been hacked, report it. So here we're developing the human sensor. But once again, we've made this as easy as possible by giving them a cheat sheet to follow. All right, this was fast, this was furious. My end goal here is to keep security as simple as possible for you. In other words, here are 3 key takeaways to helping build a secure culture in your organization. First and foremost, put managing your human risk to a strategic priority. What I mean by that is if you have a security awareness program, do not just randomly pick some technical person on your security team and say, oh, by the way, in addition to everything else you're doing, you are now also in charge of the awareness program. That will fail. If you're serious about securing your workforce, about building a strong security culture, you need to identify someone and put them in charge full-time. You probably have somebody full-time about your endpoint security, perimeter security, or security operations center. If you're serious about human risk, you need to have a full-time person also. If you have if you treat security awareness as a part-time job, security culture as a part-time job, you will get part-time results. 2, we need to make security as simple as possible. For Homer Simpson. Focus on as few behaviors as possible, as few policies and procedures as possible. Focus on the fewest that have the greatest impact. And by the way, probably the top 2 that I can think of is phishing and passwords. Those 2 are typically the 2 biggest human risks for most organizations. Finally, partner with communications. Anytime you're doing any communication or outreach, don't have someone highly technical put the communications together. Work with marketing or communications and start all communications with the why. Why is this important? Why do people benefit? And don't focus on why this is important to the organization, but why it's important to the individual. Remember our example with password managers. They make your life simple. You can use them in your personal life. Use them to help secure your kids. Get them motivated. So remember, it's all about the Newton equation. F equals ma. To apply a force to our organization, motivate, and ability. I just want to end a quote with a true security visionary and somebody I greatly admire, Bruce Schneier. Ultimately, Bruce says, if we continue to take a purely technical approach to security, we're going to continue to lose. We also have to start taking the human in perspective. All right, I hope we have some time for questions. If you do have questions and you want to email me, more than happy to answer any questions via email, lspitzner@sans.org, or all sorts of information about learning more about the human side of cybersecurity at this URL. All right, Max, I hope we finished in time for questions. Do we have any questions we'd like to answer?
We don't have any questions yet. Let me see if somebody asks something. But in the meantime, I have a question about that. How do you train the people who is in charge of security? I think you, yes, of course. I think your focus is on talking with people and motivate people, and that are some skills that are very rare on us, the nerds. How do we start with that?
Max, that is a fantastic question. Muchas gracias. So what happens is you are so right. Sometimes when I do these talks, the people that resist the most are the technical security teams, because to them, if it's not bits and bytes, it's not security. So the first thing is talking to more senior security leadership and having them help better understand we also have to start taking the human approach. And what ends up happening is, and I'm seeing this around the world, security leaders are understanding we have to approach the human side. The problem then becomes making the security team do this. So what I tend to find quite often, what helps, Max, is this, is instead of trying to teach the security team how to be better communicators and relate to people, is bringing somebody onto the security team whose background is more communications and marketing. And I'll be honest, Max, quite often part of the problem is technical security people are very good at technology. They like working with technology, but quite often they don't like working with people. Now, that's not good. That's not bad. Everybody has their preference. But if you pick somebody that is technical and does not like working with people, does not like helping people, no matter how much you train them, they won't do very well trying to secure the human side. So what I tend to find is, instead of taking somebody highly technical and forcing them to reach out to your workforce, instead bring somebody on board with a more of a communications or marketing background, have them work with and be part of the security team. They are an extension of the security team. They just help do the communication on behalf of that team. So it's not so much how do we convert the existing security team, it's how do we bring in some of those additional new skills we have to start adding.
And now my question is on the high levels of management. How do we convince them that security is important? in many of my experiences, all the people think that security should be done and not something to be invested on. How do we convince them to give more resources on that?
Well, I hate to say this, but hands down, the easiest way to have that support is when you have a breach. When your organization gets hacked, you will be stunned. I mean, they'll be all of a sudden, you'll get all this money and all this support. Now, you have about 1 week. So when you have a breach, be ready, run with it, because all of a sudden you will get support. So Max, first, many organizations still struggle with this, and it always surprises me. Now, obviously, you don't want to wait until that breach happens. So 2 things. 1, what works well with leadership is peer pressure. So if you can demonstrate to leadership, hey, leadership, all of our competitors, all of our peer companies are way ahead of us in security. So for example, they have phishing simulation programs. We're the only company that does not. That is a big motivator. Another one is trying to use data. Hey, we've had 8 incidents in the past year, costing us this amount of money. By investing this much, we can, reduce the cost this much. So I tend to find first, start with peer pressure. That is surprisingly very effective with leadership. If you can't get that, then maybe a cost-based analysis, try to quantify the risk. And you can also use reports like the Verizon DBIR with that. Oops.
Related on that, one question from the public, it's what strategy of acknowledging should be followed with the higher ranks of directives of universities or organizations, because they are not very aware of the security problem.
So specific to universities? So the problem with universities is 2 things. 1, they tend to have no budget. 2, universities tend to have a culture of everything is very open, research, information is free. So you tend to have a situation where security culture and the university's cultures bump heads. So for that to happen, you have to work with the different colleges, but also identify what is the key information where you have to protect. Quite often that is student PII, the student data. So where's the data and how do we secure that data? So Max, I don't have a good answer specific to universities. However, when it comes to universities, one of the experts I always go to is Randy Marchini of Virginia Tech, and he's happy to help anyone. So if anybody that's at a university wants Randy Marchini's contact information, email me at this email address, and I'll be happy to do intros. He's one of the most senior experienced CISOs at a large university in United States.
Thank you. We have 2 last questions. First one is, aren't the biometrical passwords more problematic than the text passwords? And another one, what do you recommend for people like myself who's just started a new business online with this pandemic, and we have no idea on how to build security for our clients or ourselves? In my case, I work with kids. How do I know if the platforms that I am using are safe for small business?
Okay, so 2 really, oh crap. What was the first question? I got so caught.
Biometrical.
Oh, biometric.
Versus,
yeah.
Yeah.
So are biometrics perfect? Nope. So the idea is I can authenticate just by doing that. So This makes passwords super, super simple, which I love. Now, can somebody steal my thumbprint, create a fake thumb of Lance, and then gain access to my phone and get in? Is that possible? Absolutely. Is that probable? Unless you are targeted by the NSA, the KGB, or some nation state government who's willing to spend $1 million, fly out, steal your thumb copy, steal your phone, and gain access. No. So for the vast majority of us, this is good enough. The probability is so low, I'm willing to assume the risk. And this makes it so much easier. The second question is a little harder. For small businesses, you probably want to use well-known, well-trusted solutions. So I trust Amazon, Google, and Microsoft to create secure applications. Now, do you trust the data they collect? Privacy, that's up to you. But from a security perspective, companies like Microsoft will do a better job securing applications than a lot of people. So I would not use some third-party platform I've never heard before, ran by by a small company out of China that will go out of business next month. The other key thing for small businesses is focus on the basics. 3 key things for small companies. Teach your people about phishing. Strong passwords. I love multi-factor authentication and updated systems. If people are phishing passwords and updated software and systems, if you're doing just those 3 things, you've dramatically reduced your overall risk.
Thank you. And finally, what motivation should have the universities to take account on protecting their own security? I believe you answered that, but maybe you could expand a little bit more.
So Randy Marchini from Virginia Tech helped me explain that. At Virginia Tech, their motivation is to protect student data. The reason why is this. In the United States, if student data is breached and the bad guys got that, then the university has to go public and announce it. But if the university gets hacked and it's other types of data and it's not student data, then they don't have to report it. So they're very motivated to protect student data because of legal compliance requirements. So when Randy Marchini has a system hacked at his university, his first question is, was there student data? If there was, big deal. If there was not so much a big deal. So what I tend to find for universities, it tends to be compliance that tends to often be the biggest motivator. So for like a financial company, it tends to be other things like financials, reputation, things like that. But for universities, compliance, I tend to find the biggest.
Well, finally, we have a felicitation from Sandra Hernandez, who said that this is a very interesting conference. So thank you very much, Lance, for all your work and conference. It's very enlightening for me too. And Evangeline Mijares will close this session now. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.